Utah at Oklahoma State, 4 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Utah now a 2.5 point favorite. Seen a lot of line movement already this week. Over under set at 54 on this one. As I was just saying in our live show that we're doing, this one is just, it seems to be a game that is really kind of snuck up on everybody. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a really, really good football game. It looks like we've got Cam Rising coming back, Mason, to play football for the Utes. You get a couple of weeks there. If you don't know, he goes out in the Baylor game, cost me some money. I was betting on Utah to cover the spread. They're just, everything's going good. Cameron Rising's doing his thing. He gets hurt. He gets a laceration on his hand. He has to come out of the football game. Utah doesn't score another point. And everybody says, oh, no, here we go again. Well, then last week we hear Cam Rising, he can play. He can play, but he doesn't. And you get a little bit of development of your younger quarterback. I thought Utah looked decent last week, considering you got the backup quarterback. Been running the football good anyway. But it appears that he's ready to go, and the line just moved in the opposite direction. This thing started out, wasn't it 1.5 to the favor of Oklahoma State, and now it's moved to 2.5 in favor of Utah. Um, Whenever we did our early thoughts on this one this week, it was minus Oklahoma State on this one. So, and the total, I believe, is actually going down on this one. So, something to really keep our eye on, or maybe it went up a couple. Y'all, do you remember what it was, Mason? Actually, I think I do. What are your thoughts on this football game, man? Because if Cam Rising's playing, obviously things are going to look a lot different. And we have no reason to believe that he's not, other than the fact that he didn't last week. What do you think about this football game?
Well, I think it all depends on whether or not Cam Rising plays and is healthy. I think that that's a big deal in this football game. I think Utah has a better team overall. I really feel good about their defense and the way that they've been playing on defense. But when you look at Oklahoma State, this is a veteran led defense. And look, actually, bigger picture here, these are two of the best coaches in the country overall. And personnel wise and all that. These are two of the best staffs in the country that are going off and playing against each other. So I think that the coaching advantages are null and void. I think that it is a complete wash. These are two of the best to do it, not just in the Big 12, but in the country. Highly underrated coaches here, both of them. But going back to Oklahoma State, what's been really surprising is the fact that Alan Bowman has been winning them football games, and it hasn't been Ollie Gordon since week one. You look at the Arkansas game; Arkansas had Oklahoma State on the ropes at home, and then Alan Bowman kind of takes over in the fourth quarter, and we're thinking, what the heck? Where did this come from? Presley played really well in the fourth quarter. That's been the biggest surprise to me is the Oklahoma State passing game. I don't think that anybody gave them enough credit going into the season. We really felt like it would be the Ollie Gordon show once again. And look, I feel like Alan Bowman has kind of taught us that as a quarterback, you can teach an old dog new tricks because this isn't something that we've seen from him in his long career. I think this is the seventh year now. We haven't seen this type of Alan Bowman yet, and I think that could spoil Utah's plans overall. Does he continue to play at that level? Does he come back to earth a little bit? It's a big question mark to me in this football game. But I know what I got in Cam Rising. He's been very consistent in his play when he plays, and so that's kind of the question for me is whether or not Cam Rising plays and is 100% with the cut on his hands. It sounds like he is. I feel good about it, but we've seen this song and dance before, and we could very well be sitting there, Saturday evening looking at this game like, man, they pulled the rug out from under us once again. We don't get to see Cam Rising or something like that. I don't expect that to happen. It sounds like he's definitely going to play, but yeah, that's to me that he's the catalyst of this entire football game. The how Cam Rising plays is going to dictate who wins or loses this football game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if Isaac Wilson, the brother of NFL player Zach Wilson, if he's the starter for Utah on this one, which I do think he's the starter of the future, by the way, Utah fans, I think this is your quarterback of the future. But if he's starting in this situation this year in this game, I think that bodes poorly for your football team. Um, Now, let's talk about Oklahoma State and some of the strengths that this football team possesses. You talked about Ollie Gordon. The last couple of games, he's had 17 rushes in each of the last two games, less than 50 yards rushing for each one of them. And I asked Oklahoma State fans earlier this week, I said, what is going on with Ollie Gordon? And I had one person tell me that he does have a very minor injury somewhere on his lower extremity, not a big deal. He's playing through that, but it's more of the fact that they're loading up the box. I mean, they're just loading up the box and daring this team to throw. And I think what it is a lot of defenses are hoping that Alan Bowman's going to make a mistake because, I mean, he has a lot in his career. He's got a lot of interceptions. He threw a lot of them last year, 15 or so. So I think that's kind of the thought process of a lot of these defenses is we're not going to let Ollie Gordon beat us. We're going to make this team get them in obvious passing downs and try to beat them that way. But the problem is, you've got Owens and Stribling and Presley, and as far as wide receiver trios go in college football, as long as all three of those guys are healthy, right there, give me those three, and I think I can win some damn football games, man. Those three guys, as far as running out on the route, making explosive plays, they've been really, really good. Rashad Owens, especially, a guy that we didn't get to see a ton of last year. Not as much as we would have liked. I think Stribling had some injury issues as well. So you feel really, really good about that. The offensive line was something we talked about in the offseason. One of the most veteran-laden offensive lines to have ever graced the field in college football history, just because of the fact of the COVID extra year and things like that. Can I just say that I feel like the offensive line has kind of been a disappointment, in my opinion. Not nearly as good as far as rush blocking as I thought they would be. I think they're pretty decent, maybe what we thought they were as far as pass pro, but as far as run blocking, it's just been disappointing. Can OSU figure out a way to get the pad levels lower and run the football? I don't know if this is a good game for that. This is a senior laden defensive line for Utah. We'll kind of talk about that here in just a minute, but they got a bunch of dudes over there. I mean, they got a bunch of big old dudes and one of the most well coached football teams in all of America. So I like this Oklahoma State offense. They're going to score some points. There's no doubt about it, and it certainly is the strength of this team. What do you think about the OSU offense in this one?
Well, I mean, looking at their offense, I kind of said what I needed to say there. This is an offense that's centered around Ollie Gordon. We haven't seen him utilized as much, which is actually scarier if you're an opposing defense because how do you game plan for this offense at this point?
Pick your poison.
That's right, absolutely. Because if you don't account for Ollie Gordon, which every team that has faced Oklahoma State so far, that's been what they've done. They've accounted for Ollie Gordon, and they said, Alan Bowman, if you're going to beat us, just beat us. And he beats them. He's been beating them for the past couple of weeks. And so, to me, for this Utah defense, which is a great segue into our next topic, the defense for Utah is going to have to do both, which I do think that they've got a total defense that can handle the run game and handle the passing game. But at the same time, scheme matters, right? So how does Utah play both? You can't really play both. You kind of have to play one or the other. You can do some zone stuff and rush forward. And if your guys up front win, then you've succeeded. But that's a tough ask. Maybe they do have the guys up front to win against this Oklahoma State offensive line. You mentioned them being a little bit lackluster so far this season. Maybe that is the game plan. But so far, I think as a unit, this Utah defense has played really well. I think that they will be up for the challenge for this offense of Oklahoma State, and I really feel confident that up front, these big Samoans up front for Utah are playing better than most teams in the country right now. And I don't see that ending right now. You see what they've been able to do on third down, 22.22%. That's fifth in the country. A lot of that is dependent upon what you do on first and second down, and they've done a really good job of bending but not breaking, not allowing a lot of explosives, keeping the ball in front of them. It doesn't take expert analysis to see that, but ultimately, to me, the Utah defense kind of gets the edge, in my opinion, over the Oklahoma State offense. Which a casual college football fan's probably not going to say that, but they've been better than I expected them to be at this point, considering what they lost off of this defense from last year.
Yeah, and they've been led by those two guys up front. Connor O'Toole has had a really pretty decent year so far, but Van Fillinger is one that has really tore it up. 16 tackles, 3 pass deflections, and 3.5 sacks already this year. He's an absolute problem there on the end. And as I said, Connor O'Toole, 12 tackles for him, 2.5 sacks for him this year. So and a forced fumble as well. So those are two senior guys that are certainly going to be able to, you know, I'm thinking they're going to be able to get in the backfield, Mason, and I think they're going to be able to cause some issues. And I think
Yeah.
it's going to be tough sledding again for Oklahoma State here. I don't think you're going to have a ton of success running the football over and over again. We saw Oklahoma State in that first game against Arkansas, which I know it was overtime. It had an overtime game and everything. But Ollie Gordon ran the ball 28 times. I don't think you see that in this game. Um, that I feel like that would just be beating your head against a wall in this game. Utah is really, really stout. You can see all the stats there, guys. They're not bad at anything really on defense. I think they're strong on the defensive line, and I think they're pretty strong in that secondary as well. Kareem Reed, Zemiah Vaughn, a couple of guys that have done really, really well this year. And look, a good defensive line that can provide pressure and havoc, um, matched with what we think is a pretty good secondary, decent players for sure. It's like peanut butter and jelly. A defensive line and a good secondary can win you some football games, and I think that's what Utah has right here. And Kyle Whittingham has been known for, you know, kind of just his peanut butter and jelly style college football teams, man. Just kind of plain Jane, but we're not doing anything special. We're not running trick plays. We're not doing anything gimmicky, but line up and see what you got. And that's what Utah. That's their attitude in this football game. They think they've got a better overall football program in team than Oklahoma State does. Utah fits right in the Big 12. It's hard to believe they were even in the Pac 12 with the style of football that they play and everything. They were not anything like a Pac 12 program that I have in my head. I know the Pac 12 was good last year, but when I think Pac 12, I think a bunch of teddy bears, and they are definitely not that, man. That is 100% the truth. We've already talked about the offense some, but look, Michael Bernard has been really good. Um, which way do you want it from these receivers? Dorian Singer has been good so far this year. Brant Keithy, we've seen him line up and take direct snaps on this offense. We've seen him catching passes. We've seen him scoring touchdowns. We've seen it all from Brant Keithy. We know what he's able to do. It just all depends on Cam Rising. I think he's going to play. I think we'll be good. Yeah, I feel good about that. Some of these numbers are a little skewed. I am impressed with the way that Utah's been able to run the football without Cam out there, because when Cam's not out there, it's kind of like it's the opposite of like if you brought Herschel Walker in the game back in the day, everybody knew what was up, right? Herschel's running up the middle, Herschel's running it left, and then he's running it right, and then we rinse and repeat, right? When Cam Rising's not in the game, you know what Utah's going to be trying to do, and they're going to be trying to run the football. But it hasn't mattered this year. Last year, I felt like they beat their head against the wall over and over multiple times. Seems like they're figuring out ways to, kind of move on. Because look, hey, life after Cam Rising is coming before you know it. That's going to be here at the end of this season. So I think Utah over the last couple of weeks has been able to kind of work on a couple of things that they're going to probably utilize next year, right? Especially Isaac Wilson, um, who I think will be the quarterback of the future, but you don't want to see him this week, that's for sure. We'll know more about this offense after this game. I love Money Parks. Um, I love the options that this team has. Dejon Stanley is actually leading the team in receiving yards. He's a sophomore, a guy that we didn't even hardly talk about in the offseason or preseason. So you got a nice little surprise there, which is always good. And as we said, the Utah defensive line has been really good, 10 sacks so far. So I think Utah's kind of got it on both sides of the ball, just as long as their playmakers show up to play.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Micah Bernard, the running back who's played really, really well for this team, especially in Cam Rising's absence. But one of the last guys you mentioned, Dejon Stanley, probably the better running back of the two. He just tends to do it in a different way. He's been doing it in the passing game on 5 receptions, 155 yards. That's 31 yards averaging on those 5 catches with 2 touchdowns. Been an absolute explosive playmaker. I mean, he is the definition of explosive when he's catching the ball out of the backfield. Is he going to be able to sustain 31 yards per catch? No, he's not. But
He had a
he adds
75-yard touchdown there, which skewed it a little bit, but
right.
he's been great.
Yeah, he's been great, and he adds a little bit of a different dynamic. Other outside of Micah Bernard and Mike Mitchell, Um, he gives you that pass catching weapon out of the backfield that many of the great offenses in college and in the pros these days, they've got one of those guys that can do that, and it kind of completes this offense for Utah. Brent Keithy, I mean, he might be the best tight end in the country. I think he's on a very short list of best in the country. And once again, Utah's got a fantastic tight end and a great option for a young quarterback when Cam Rising goes out. I mean, you've got great running backs and a great tight end. Come on, man. That's all you can ask for as a young quarterback. And on top of that, you've got 4 guys who all have over 100 yards receiving. That's phenomenal. Money Parks, Dorian Singer, Dejon Stanley, and Brant Keithy, all over 100 yards so far on the season for this offense. What more can you ask for? I guess maybe a Cam Rising's what more you could ask for. Him actually playing in these games makes a big difference. And so with him playing in this game, I feel pretty good about Utah.
We'll talk about that OSU defense for just a minute. It's left a lot to be desired as far as, well, pretty much everything. I mean, let's just be honest. Red zone scoring, you can kind of point to that a little bit and say, well, they've backed opponents up and got them out of scoring position a few times, and that's good. Not many teams have got into the red zone. Most of the teams score from outside the red zone on this team. So, that you take from that what you will. Nick Martin is an absolute animal. Absolute animal. He's well on his way to have a bajillion tackles again this year. I really like him. He's got 34 tackles so far this year. Trey Rucker is a senior safety on this team. He's got 39 tackles. So he actually has more tackles than Nick Martin so far this year. Um, so there's a couple of really good just ballers on this defense. It's crazy. Um, but overall, they just can't seem to, numerically or statistically, however you want to say it, they've just struggled. They just absolutely struggled. Obi Ezigbo, he's a senior defensive end. He's got 12 tackles, 2 sacks. He'll be providing some pressure along with Nick Martin, who's got a couple of sacks himself. Like I said, I'm a huge Nick Martin fan. Um, I like some of the pieces that they've got on this team, but man, statistically, they just have laid a stinker a couple of times, and um, I like the well-roundedness of Utah. Obviously, I want a complimentary football team if I'm the coach or a fan of a team, and this team seems a little bit lopsided. But Mason, they've done well in the red zone, and they're averaging giving up 20.3 points per game defensively, which is top half in the country. So maybe they're just bend don't break. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. They're very top heavy. Nick Martin, Trey Rucker, both are top six in the country in total tackles, and they were two of the best last year. We mentioned it in our preseason breakdown, but when your safety is leading the team in tackles, it's not good. It's not good. That means that players are getting to the third level of the defense. Now he comes up and plays the run really, really well as a strong safety, probably the best in the country at
He
doing it.
knows he has to.
But yeah, but my point still stands.
Yeah.
The safety shouldn't have that opportunity to get through two levels of the defense to be the one to make the tackle. That's not great. Obi Ezekbo is the other is probably the third. Bright light in this defense. He's been very good. He's been excellent in the pass rush. But this is a team that we said going into this offseason or during the offseason, heading into the season, is a veteran group, but that doesn't mean that they're a good group, right? They're veteran led, which helps in situations, but if you don't have the talent there, that's a scary situation. So to me, yeah, you've got three really good pieces that can kind of wreck a game, but the rest of the pieces just are not holding their end of the bargain. They're not pulling their weight here. Um, they're going to have to play much better against Utah if they plan on winning this game.
Got to get a turnover, right? I feel like you've got to get a turnover in this one, or two, and you've got to get a couple of sacks. Just like Oklahoma in that Tennessee matchup they've got this weekend. I think Oklahoma needs at least one interception and three sacks. And I think Oklahoma State needs to get three sacks and an interception in this game. That's what I think to win this football game. I feel like that's a padlock stat in my opinion. But all in all, this is going to be a really, really good football game. I do think this one ends up being really close. I think this one comes down to the very end. Um, I just like Utah. I don't, I liked Utah plus the points earlier this week. There's been a 5-point swing on this spread, and I assume that has everything to do with Cam Rising and people realizing that he's going to be able to play. How many points is he worth? I think he's worth more than 5. I think he's worth more than 5. So I've still got value here. I feel like Mason by taking Utah minus 2.5. When it starts getting up over 3, 3 being a key number, obviously. Um, I start to get a little scared because I think Oklahoma State has pop potential. There's no doubt about it. They absolutely do. They could get out. Oklahoma State could come out here and get out to a 21-point lead in this football game. It wouldn't surprise me. They're explosive as hell. It would not surprise me a bit. But then it wouldn't surprise me if Utah made their way right back in the football game. Here come the third quarter, fourth quarter, and we've got a ball game on our hands. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm. This one is just get your popcorn ready. Is all I got to say, because this is going to be must see TV. But give me Utah minus 2.5. OSU is a good football team. I've been on Utah since the preseason. Um, I try to exalt all my preconceived notions, but I still feel like Utah's a good football team, and I'm gonna stick with my gut on this one. Um, but I think Oklahoma State is a really good football team that you cannot mark off in the Big 12, even if they lose this football game, man. Because I don't think Utah's going undefeated, and um, I don't think your Big 12 champion is going undefeated this year.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those cases in the Big 12 where we've been saying all offseason there's a ton of parity along the Big 12, and it's going to make for an interesting conference. I think one of the most interesting conferences if you're looking at just from a competitive standpoint. Um, I don't think this game's going to be any different. I don't think it's going to be a Utah blowout or anything like that. I do have them favored. I think they're favored for a reason. I like Utah. I'll lay the points at 2.5. I think that if this game does end up being a two-score game, it's going to be Utah that wins it by 2 scores. But we've seen some magic happen from Oklahoma State so far this season, and I think you could see more of the same. I think that you very well could see Oklahoma State win this football game. It's going to be back and forth. It's going to be a hell of a show. Very entertaining game to watch. I can't wait. But yeah, I like Utah on the points. Also at 54 points overall, give me
And
the
that,
under
by
on
the
that
way,
one.
before you say that, the number is going up. By the
Yeah,
way, the
give me the
total.
give me the under.
Okay.
I like the under in this play. I think it's going to be a pretty hostile environment. Utah may struggle early to score. I feel like in this type of matchup, these teams are going to be feeling each other out early on, and then the second half you'll start to see that number go up. But I could see this being like a 6 to 10 type of game going into halftime, and you feel really good about a cover at that point. But yeah, I think I feel probably better about the under than I do Utah covering.
Well, guys, if you feel good about the under, what you should do is wait till closer to the weekend because the number is trending up. So the more, if you feel like unders to play, guys, let it go up and then bet under. Right? Give yourself as much cushion as you can. Little betting advice here from First and Long College Football Show.